this conference is to also ensure that we work hard as parties to reach agreement on how effectively we together can tackle the climate change impacts at a global level in a fair manner, at a multilateral level, and working together as a globe. We are not going to be formulating a mandate, but leading the mandate of South Africa, leading the party, South Africa as a party, in tabling that mandate and actually debating and arguing with other parties of the world in order for us to ensure that we arrive at a good outcome. We know, ladies and gentlemen, that climate change is arguably the biggest challenge that faces humankind, and is also the foremost threat to sustainable development. It's a threat to economic growth and to the quality of life, improvement of the quality of life of our people. The development studies achieved by the African continent in the last decade are at risk, ladies and gentlemen, from the effects of climate change, and the global response also represents an opportunity for Africa and South Africa to further its sustainable development. Our delegation to this year's COP17, or this year's Conference of Parties meeting, has been focusing on 3 preparatory work areas, and those are the first one, as I indicated earlier on, the development and compilation, as well as approval and the lobbying for the South African COP17 negotiation positions. I'm talking about lobbying as well because we've been doing a whole lot of work throughout the world, lobbying people about what we think should be the outcome of South Africa. Secondly, the coordination and implementation of greening and legacy projects that reduce or offsets the impacts of climate change in order to leave a lasting legacy for our people. And lastly, the public climate change outreach and mobilization program that is aimed at increasing awareness and understanding of climate change by various communities here in South Africa as we approach this COP and actually beyond, because we've got to act, launching now the action beyond COP17. South Africa's commitment to implement nationally appropriate mitigation actions, which collectively will result in the reduction of carbon emissions by 34% relative to our business as usual trajectory by 2020 and by 42% in 2025, enabled with finance and technology in the context of the international agreement. This level of effort, ladies and gentlemen, will enable the greenhouse gas emission to peak between 2020 and 2025 and plateau for approximately a decade and reduce in absolute terms thereafter. Also gazetted this National Climate Change Response Policy, ladies and gentlemen. With its National Climate Change Response Policy, South Africa now has a clear roadmap on how ourselves as a nation, as a responsive government to the needs of our people and the responsible global citizen will actually respond to the global challenge of climate change. And this policy embodies South Africa's commitment to a fair contribution to the stabilization of global greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere and the protection of the country and its people from impacts of unavoidable. South Africa therefore recognizes that success of COP17 is dependent on whether a balance can be struck along 3 primary areas of work. Firstly, the balance must be achieved between operationalization of Cancun decisions and addressing pending issues from the Bali roadmap that have not yet been finalized. In addition, that is a second issue, the balance must also be achieved in how we deal with the convention and the Kyoto Protocol negotiations. And finally, a comprehensive and balanced advancement of all elements that will comprise the future climate change regime, including setting up processes to clarify the legal form of such a regime under the convention. Ladies and gentlemen, COP17 must provide opportunity for South Africa and the African continent at large to ensure that climate change and the associated changes in climate patterns do not threaten our development. And for Africa The success of climate change talks is central, since it is projected that by 2020, about 70 million and up to 30% of Africa's coastal infrastructure will face the risk of coastal flooding because of the sea level rise. South Africa, carrying the aspirations of Africa and the developing world, hopes to succeed in keeping the Kyoto Protocol as part of our future climate regime as we negotiate an outcome to the negotiations under the convention. And the outcome of COP17, COP7, must ensure that all countries acknowledge that the effects of climate change on the planet and its people, as well as our economies, are not ignored, and that we all have a responsibility to save tomorrow today. Let us embark on climate action now.